used their comfort board 80. We used it under slab, and then we used it on our foundation walls. You can also use this on roofs. You can use it on exterior walls. For over 50 years, they've been servicing us. It's a time-tested solution, and one of the things I love about this is this stuff is just easy to work with. You can get their little knife. You have an outlet, right? How hard is that? Stuff's really good. If you're looking for insulation, yeah, check out Rockwell. So the IGU, insulated glazing unit. It's not just the glass, it's the three pieces of glass. It's the sealant that runs around and seals and closes those two cavities with those three panes of glass. It's the films that are on that glass that give it that low coating, which helps in that energy efficiency of the unit, as well as the spacer, the desiccant that's in the spacer, so we're not getting moisture in between those pieces of glass. That is a damn good glazing unit, set in a damn good frame. Center of glass, R10.10. The frame, that's kind of where it brings that average down. So a window unit like this is probably in like a 0.15 range, which is a U value. You can't call it R value because as energy moves through here, there's a number of different components that slow that energy transfer. So we want to make sure that we have our air sealing done correctly. We have really good windows. We have that continuous insulation on the outside. We jumped to a 24-inch on center frame. What that translates to is it allows us to come into a space like this, and you can see we have our airtight enclosure that we pushed up. Now you can see all of the ductwork is in. We have some of the blocking for the interior finishes here, but we don't have a lot of ductwork. This one space is getting fed by this 8-inch round or 7-inch round. We have this space here, again, 7-inch round here. Why is that? How am I able to put big windows in like that, but only put in a couple ducts? Because this house is built like a system. And it's built by a contractor, Shoreline Builders, Jim and Taylor, who not only acknowledge the system, but they pay attention to all the details of how it gets put together. And the sub-trades are why we can have a room like this with all of this glass and have two of these 7-inch round ducts here. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. We talked about the wall. Notice as we go up into the ceiling, we have our Siegel Myrex here that connects the wall to our HVAC chase up here. So the insulators, they air sealed our wall system there, but our air sealing goes up and goes across the top of the attic. And we're going to have a blown-in insulation up there, probably around an R80. I think we're called for 22 inches of settle. We're going to have about R80 in the attic there that'll go up over that mechanical chase. Let's head on over. We're going to go down the hall here. I have a little mock-up set up. We'll talk a little bit more about insulation soon. I'll see you down there. I would like to take credit for saying, hey, I set up a nice little stage here, but this is actually the staging that they use to run the insulation around. I got a sample of the Comfort Bath. Now, Rockwell, like a lot of manufacturers, have multiple products. So they don't just make a bat insulation, they make a board insulation. This could also be used on the outside of a wall for continuous insulation. You can put multiple layers, you can stagger the joints, you can put it on the roof for the same thing. You can put it on a sloped roof, insulate it from the outside, put a layer of sheathing or strapping, put your metal roof or shingles on top of that. If I were to insulate the house and I don't put continuous insulation on it, then I am effectively insulating about 65% of the wall system. Because there's opaque area, which is where all the studs are. You can see here we have our jacks, our king. In this case, we have a double king. We have cripples. We have windows. So there's a bunch of aspects that make up the wall system. About 65% of it's cavities, about 15 to 18% somewhere in there windows, and 15 to 18% somewhere in there with the framing. So it depends on the house. You have a beautiful house sitting on the ocean, obviously the glazing ratio is going to be a little higher. A more traditional house like this that has punched openings 3x5, maybe that number is a little lower. My point is that if we just concentrated on putting it in a cavity, that would be like me unzipping my coat and walking around in the cold. I have insulation here, but I don't have it in this strip here. And that is exactly what would be happening here. I have R23 here, but at the stud, I have roughly R5.5. By putting a rigid insulation on the outside, like in this house we have zip on 6, not only does it bump the cavity to R29, but it doubles the R value at all of our opaque framing. So this immediately goes from that R6 to R12. Now, that while that helps, it's still not the worst part of the wall because, as I spoke of earlier, we have very good windows, triple glazed, and these are still probably R7-ish, plus or minus. Always the worst part of the wall. But the triple glazing is very important. One of the beauties of the Comfort Bat is you can take your bread knife here and you can just slice this and dice it. Stone wool insulation. This used to be a rock, basalt rock. That's what it comes from. There are no chemical fire retardants in this. This is naturally fire retardant because guess what? If I go take a piece of basalt rock and I put a torch to it, it doesn't burn. So I put this piece up here, and this is, even though it looks like a Comfort Bat, Rockwell makes a product called Safe and Sound. The safe part is the fact that it's fire retardant. So we can put it in the ceilings of our basement, in between floor joists, and we can meet the fire rating required for open joist framing or open truss framing in our basement. As we come upstairs, you can see I tucked this one nice and neatly, fits into that 3.5-inch 2x4 wall, and we'll have a number of places where we'll use this as the safe and sound part, right? It has a very good acoustical property to it, so that we'll fill up the walls around the bedrooms, between the bathroom and the bedroom, so someone can go in there and take a shower, and we're not waking somebody up in the bed. There's someone in the bathroom taking a shower. Let's look on downstairs, and we'll talk a little bit more about the insulation down there, and then we can close out this video. So I'll see you down there. Now, what happens when I have a really good air seal, but then I need to cut a hole in it? So in this house, we have an ERV strategy. We're going to use some Fantech units, and those Fantech units are more of a centralized unit. So we still need some exhaust fans for localized odor control in our bathrooms, humidity control in our bathrooms. And so you can see we have our bath fan here. Our bath fan is punched up through our Sigma-Myrex. This membrane is our air barrier. Remember, our zip goes up the outside, transitions over the plate to the Myrex. The Myrex goes across the ceiling. The Myrex is, in fact, our air barrier. So anytime that we can put something, we want to put it to the inside of that. But there are occasions, larger bath fans, where we have to punch through the system. So Taylor, you can see, he made this airtight plywood box. It's all taped, and then the bath fan is attached to it. And you can see here, the bath ductwork is all taped up, but more importantly, it's air sealed at that transition from the bath fan box to the attic, which is an unconditioned, fully ducted attic. On top of that box, we're going to get about 20 inches of insulation, but it's an air permeable insulation. It's not air semi. So we have to build that airtight assembly here if we want to maintain continuity in our air barrier strategy. Now, as I come through you can see we have our SIGA membrane there, and we have a bunch of 2x4s that we put in. The 2x4s are doing a couple of things. One, it's carrying that insulation. Yes, we're going to have thousands of pounds of blown-in insulation in the attic. We don't want it to end up on the floor the day after it's installed. So our 24-inch truss systems, and you can see there's one there, 24 inches here, 24 inches there. Well, the 24 inches, yeah, it's starting to push the limits of SIGA, Mirex, and the SAG. So we turn the 2x4s go perpendicular to the trusses, and then we switch to a 16-inch on center. So we cut down by 30% that span that the Mirex has to hold up that insulation. And oh, by the way, the reason we choose 2x4s instead of, say, 1x4s are because now we can attach our fixtures here, the rough fixture, for all of our recessed lights that will simply pop up inside of that. All of our electrical in the kitchen, it is all running inside the air barrier. It comes over, you can see it goes into the plate, it comes down into the wall. It goes over to the plate, comes down into the wall. That electrical never goes outside of the air barrier. On occasion, when it does, we ensure that it gets all sealed up. And you can see that Mirex comes all the way, but then we hit the living room part, and we switch to a zip sheeting here. We're going to do a recess above the ceiling. So that identifies this space as the living space within the larger space of this great room, which is kitchen, dining, and living space there. So you can see the SIGA Mirex is simply brought over, turned up, and then taped off and sealed to the zip, and then the zip goes across the top. Why did we switch? Well, we're going to have a lot of attachments up there to attach all of the rough framing for our coffin ceiling, and then in fact all of the finish framing, the crown moldings, etc., to make this an absolutely gorgeous ceiling. But not only is it going to look good, it's going to perform as good as it looks. So we put that zip up there. But now we're tasked with the how do we put lights into this area, because I don't have those furring strips anymore where I can make that attachment. Somehow I have to figure out if I penetrate through the zip, which is my air barrier, how am I going to seal any lights? Well, this is where Taylor and Jim used their systems thinking. And so they built these boxes, and these are probably somewhere on the order of about 16 inches square. It's an inch and a half of foam, so it's basically an R10 box, all sealed up, taped, nice flat side. So what they're going to do is they'll drill a series of pilot holes, put a little flag up into the attic, go up into the attic, seal this up, and then drop this down on the back side of the zip. After the coffer goes in and the electrician wants to pinpoint the exact placement of that, they'll go to that pilot hole, make whatever adjustment that they need, because you can see here, we're probably talking that's maybe a 3 or 4 inch device, and we have about 12, 14 inches around here that we can maneuver that way. And our continuity now goes across that zip. It gets connected to this. We get the void in here for the light, and then it comes back down here, connects to the zip. The zip eventually connects to the Mirex. The Mirex connects to the exterior sheeting on the outside. And that, my friends, is how we maintain continuity in our air seat, right? Little thing about airtightness. If you're building your house and you're saying, hey, Steve, what's something I should consider a good number? If we can hit 1.5 or better, I don't think we search for any more hits. If we get below 1.0, consider that an exceptional job. And if we make the Passive House standard of 0.60 or better, then take the builder out for a beer and a really good dinner, because they're doing one hell of a job. We talked about the window upstairs. How about a 12-foot sliding glass door, right? Lift and slide. Some of the best hardware. I mean, every time I get around one of these, I want to open it just because I want to play. Once they release, and you might sit there and say, well, Steve is just super strong. I appreciate it. The reality is this panel is probably a 400-pound panel. The reason it's called lift and slide is because it lifts and then rolls. But the minute I drop this down, guess what? Yeah. What about it? Like, I can move it, but it takes some force because that whole unit is now dropped down. Getting a window manufacturer and a product that also understands all of the strategies that we talked about in this video is very important because the success of a house like this is not any one thing. It is a whole page of characteristics that get stitched together, knitted together by a really good team. And the result is when you stand behind the video and say, we're building someone's forever home, then you better have the right army of people behind you to do an exceptional job at every time. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't watched the previous videos on the Earl Foundation, all of the framing, be sure to go check them out and stay tuned. It's going to get really exciting in here because you're going to start to see the things that everybody wants to do. I'm Steve Basic Architect. This is the Build Show. This is our program.
HSBC charging, charge 2 ways, 12 hours ready, auto shell, high charge. No fast charging magnetic here at USB-C direct charging. Have support charging for 15 minutes for lights.
Want to watch Undecided?
What's undecided? This one?
Yeah, Farrell, yeah.
Grid is dead?
Yeah, the grid is
In
dead.
April 2025, most of Spain and Portugal went dark. A cascading failure knocked out the Iberian Peninsula's grid in seconds. Just 4 years earlier, Texas came within 4 minutes and 37 seconds of its own total collapse. Not a temporary blackout, a full shutdown. What engineers call a black start, a process that can take days to weeks to recover from. Not to mention all the people that died as a result. The infrastructure that failed them? Well, according to the Department of Energy, 70% of the U.S. transmission lines are over 25 years old. We're running 21st century lives on a mid-20th century grid. But here's the thing. One guy actually saw this coming. Back in 1997, energy consultant Carl Ramago wrote a blueprint for a radically different grid. His model? The internet. Seriously, the internet. And no, I'm not talking about today's internet, which is just 5 billionaires in a trench coat. I'm talking about the 90s internet. Decentralized, collaborative, and just really, really cool. So how would the internet stop a blackout? And why did the guy who figured it out get ignored for 30 years? First, we need to understand what went so wrong. I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by Outscope. The United States energy grid is many things. A lifeline, a miracle, a house of cards. But one thing it isn't is current. Let me rephrase that. It doesn't reflect our modern world yet. The Department of Energy puts it bluntly. Our electric infrastructure is aging and it's being pushed to do more than it was originally designed to do. The U.S. grid is split into just 3 regions, East, West, and, well, Texas. More than 60 balancing authorities coordinate energy flowing through 180 million power poles, 5.5 million miles of transmission lines, and thousands of power plants. Their job? Make sure supply matches demand every second, every day. If that balance breaks for even a moment, components get damaged, infrastructure weakens, or worse, lights go out. When a blackout looms, our backup plan is basically turn things off and just hope for the best. One of our last-ditch protocols, called under-frequency load shedding, is just automatically flipping circuit breakers until the grid stabilizes. We've been doing it since the 1960s. When that doesn't work, utilities roll out rotating blackouts, cutting power to alternating groups of customers. When that doesn't work, it's a total reset. That's what nearly happened in Texas. When temperatures dropped in February 2021, electricity demand surged while generators went offline one by one. ERCOT, the Texas grid, scrambled to rebalance, but it took days of blackouts to stabilize the grid. They were 4 minutes and 37 seconds from needing that total restart. Blackout or black start, when the grid fails, things get dark. And the strangest part is, someone wrote the fix for this in 1997. Not a research paper, a full blueprint. It's been sitting there for almost 30 years. So why hasn't anyone built it? Here's where I'll get personal for a second. I have over 40 solar panels on my roof. I have 20 kilowatt hours of energy storage in my garage. My geothermal heat pump handles heating, cooling, and hot water so efficiently that my HVAC barely registers on my electric bill. When my grid goes down, honestly, I sleep pretty well at night. It's not a brag, that's the point. The binary of we have power or we don't only exists when you're completely dependent on a monolithic grid with monolithic power generation. And today we have cost-effective ways to break that dependency. Rooftop solar, community solar farms, batteries, EVs that can power your house. These tools give you power in every sense of the word. You can become what the industry calls a prosumer, part consumer, part producer. You sell excess power back to the grid, you chip in during times of strain, and most importantly, when things go sideways, you're not helpless. This applies to residential and commercial buildings. So what would the world look like if everyone had that kind of choice? What if we could pick our energy the way we pick our internet providers? Well, it turns out there's a name for this, and the guy who coined it accidentally proved it works, thanks to his own mother. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I get into that name, and yes, there is a story about his mom, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Just like this story, it's about doing more with what you already have. Smarter tools, distributed solutions, taking back some control. That's how I describe what AI has done for running this channel behind the scenes. Not for generating videos, but for the unglamorous stuff. AI has quickly taken over parts of my job that used to eat just time. Importing data, analyzing our production pipeline in Notion, automating the boring stuff so that I can spend more time on the interesting stuff. That kind of AI I'm genuinely a fan of, which is what today's sponsor is actually about. It's called Outskill. It's a free AI education platform, and it's already reached over 10 million people across 100 countries. With a 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot. They're holding a 2-day live AI mastermind this weekend, April 11th and 12th, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, both days. It draws experience from over 100 practitioners, including people who built AI systems at NVIDIA and Microsoft. The focus is practical. You'll learn how to build AI agents that execute tasks for you, automate workflows that run while you're not watching, and connect tools like Sheets or Notion into systems that actually save you hours every single week. But here's the coolest part. It's free. The first 1,000 people get full access at no cost. You'll also get over $5,000 in bonuses if you attend, including an AI prompt guide and personalized toolkit builder. Just by registering, you'll get access to their AI survival handbook too. The link's in the description or scan the QR code. And thanks to Outscale and to all of you for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to what the name of this new energy future might be. Part of the beauty of the internet is that there's no singular plug to pull that collapses a network of networks. Just because one ISP is doing maintenance in New York doesn't mean that everyone on the East Coast is locked out of their phones. Just because one website is down doesn't mean every other website is unavailable. The helplessness of an internet outage only gets serious when what you need is controlled by a single entity, which is kind of exactly my point. We saw this play out in back-to-back incidents in the fall of 2025, when centralized internet service failures left millions stranded. Now, chances are that you've heard of crapification that's been plaguing online services, so let me introduce you to something that doesn't stink: internetification. It's a proposal to take the internet's most powerful feature, its decentralization, and apply it to energy. Its most basic, this is about microgrids, small, self-contained power networks that can connect to the main grid, but also disconnect and run on their own. Think of it like your home Wi-Fi. Your devices all talk to each other inside your house. They can reach the wider internet when they want to, but if your ISP goes down, your local network keeps humming along. So what makes a microgrid micro? It comes down to DERs, or distributed energy resources. These are the solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries that change the direction energy moves. Up until the last few decades, delivering energy was a one-sided affair. The utility generated or bought electricity, sent it to you, and that was that. You get what you get, no choice in where, when, or how. DERs flip that script. That's what turned you from a passive consumer into a prosumer, or someone who both uses and produces energy. But beyond individual empowerment, DERs are what make microgrids resilient. When more people, communities, and companies produce and store their own power, there's less pressure on the grid overall. Fewer demand spikes, fewer emergencies. When the main grid goes down, a microgrid can disconnect and keep running on its own, which is what engineers call islanding. That's why hospitals, grocery stores, and data centers already rely on them. In hospitals, for example, backup generators usually aren't enough to keep life support equipment like ventilators scanners or dialysis machines running for more than just a few hours. Microgrids in healthcare facilities can work as a safety net that protects patients. Right now, the energy grid is a lot like the internet in terms of markets. Some people are lucky enough to live in areas where they can freely pick their service provider. Others aren't, like myself. Having multiple ISPs competing in the same area is a good thing. It drives innovation and it doesn't threaten the overall health of the net. Microgrids extend that same freedom of choice to energy, and we've known this works for quite a while. The concept goes back 30 years, and it starts with a guy who calls himself a regulatory hitman. Carl Luago has been on every side of the energy debate. Texas Public
That's the class that you put in the balance of the library,
Can you take her?
Yeah.
Why?
Put in there, you know, the balance.
Why?
So what's it, you know?
Because I was going to take you home and then run and go see the tax person. Are you
Utility
going to go with her by yourself? Or are you going to have a panic attack as soon as they start driving off?
Well, I'll see. I'll just, let me see about that.
Department of Energy
We'll see.
official, Vice President of Austin Energy. He spent 3 decades inside the system and 3 decades arguing that the system needs to change. In 1997, he wrote a book chapter on the virtual utility. In it, he basically described the grid that we need today. One message of the new information media is that truly revolutionary growth in the ubiquity and use of information came only with decentralization and nearly unfettered interconnection. If this message has an analog in the electric utility industry, it is the distributed utility model. Rather than the brute force solution of adding a new power plant or expensive transmission upgrade, the careful targeting of modular and flexible efficiency or renewable options offers least cost options to enhance service quality and reliability. That was in 1997, the same year most of us were still on dial-up. I sat down with Carl and asked him, well, after 30 years, has anything changed your mind? His answer was blunt.
The unescapable conclusion is that the distributed architecture for so many things is the most elegant and efficient, from nature, to communities, to the electric grid.
But Carl didn't just write papers about it, he tested it. And some of his best stories sound less like energy policy and more like a sitcom. At Austin Energy, Carl ran a thermostat control program covering 95,000 homes. One day he stopped by his mom's house for lunch. She was cranking the air conditioning before a scheduled demand response event. She'd gotten the notice and decided to pre-cool the house before Carl, her own son, turned off her electricity. Here's the punchline. She accidentally proved the entire concept. When customers got advance notice, they pre-cooled their homes on their own. The grid got the same demand reduction. Customers stayed comfortable, and the utilities sold just as much electricity, so everybody won. And Carl's team took it further. Instead of picking a vendor and deploying one proprietary thermostat, they did something radical. They said, bring your own thermostat. You pick the device, just make sure it connects to our API. We'll keep a secure system behind the firewall, and you'll see pricing in real time. And most important, if you reduce your consumption, we'll pay you. I've participated in a similar program in Massachusetts, and it was absolutely fantastic. Sound familiar? It's open standards, customer choice, security at the boundary, innovation at the edge, and that's the internet model, but applied to energy in Austin over a decade ago. You can check out my full in-depth interview with Carl on my second channel, where we'll go into everything from net metering to what it means to be an efficiency advocate. But the takeaway I want to focus on here is where the idea goes next. Carl had theory, he proved the concept in Austin, but he was missing one piece. The actual structure or device that can make it all work. It took another 28 years, and a guy nicknamed Broadband Jesus to propose the solution. Just a year after Carl published The Virtual Utility, a Swedish tech entrepreneur named Jonas Birgersson built something that would change the world. In 1998, he created a router-based broadband network that freed Sweden from dial-up. It earned him the nickname Broadband Jesus. Thanks to him, today's kids will never know the screech of a modem handshake. Decades later, Birgersson aimed at a bigger target. In September 2025, he and his Swedish-American research team published EnergyNet Explained, Internetification of Energy Distribution. The pitch? Take the exact model that decentralized the internet and build an energy version. Open source, not proprietary. Energy routers instead of internet routers. Energy net instead of internet. think you get the idea. The key to the whole thing is one technical trick. It sounds complicated, but it's actually really elegant. The key innovation is something called galvanic separation, which is also really fun to say. Galvanic separation. It draws a hard boundary between your local energy and your larger grid. The paper puts it this way. Power flows across the boundary when and only when both sides explicitly agree, using a predefined digital negotiation process managed by software. This makes it possible to support the grid while it will never be disturbed. Jurgensen said it more simply in a January interview. If you have photovoltaics, that's on one port. If there's a fault, it can't get past that port. If you have storage, it can't get past that port. Because we can never create a cascade, suddenly we can have an unlimited amount of electro tech invested locally without any technical negative effect on the traditional grid. When I asked Carl about energy routers, he didn't just endorse the idea, he said he's one device away from living it.
I have a board lighting. I have a couple of solar panels on the new garage. I have intelligent and controllable devices. And the only thing I'm missing right now is the router, which could orchestrate all those pieces for me. So yes, I think the router is the invention of this decade.
Then he took it one step further. Imagine your router talks to your neighbor's router. Sarah next door is throwing a party. You're away for the weekend. Your excess solar flows into her house. The transaction happens automatically, no utility middleman, just two routers negotiating on your behalf. That's not science fiction. It's an architecture that Jurgensen published and Carl has been imagining for 30 years. If this all sounds too good, it kind of is, at least for right now. Utilities aren't rushing to hand over the keys. Their entire business model is built on centralized generation and delivery. And Carl told me they'll fight this like they fight dealership requirements for Tesla. Anything to protect the incumbent. And even for early adopters, the transition is messy. Carl described it as a confusing array of options: time of use rates, demand response programs, solar incentives, smart panels, EV charging schedules, and that's just one house. He's a self-described energy nerd, and even he has trouble keeping track. Heck, I'm trying to live this right now in my house, and I find it very confusing. There's also the access problem. Not everyone can afford solar panels, batteries, or an EV. The prosumer revolution means nothing if it only reaches the people with money. For microgrids to work like the internet, they need to be as accessible as the internet, and we're just not there yet. So is this actually going to happen? Or is internetification just going to join the long list of great ideas that utilities buried? I'll tell you what I think, but first, there's one stat that changed my mind, and it keeps me optimistic. Every time someone claims that a certain level of solar penetration will just break the grid, that threshold keeps climbing. It used to be 5%. Then the national labs said they couldn't find any real problems below 15%. Now Holy Cross, a rural co-op in Colorado, runs on 85% renewable resources. As Carl put it, apparently they're not all living in caves and burning tar-soaked sticks for late at night. The technology for a smarter, more distributed grid exists right now. Smart panels, solar, batteries, EVs are all real, all available. Carl Rabago wrote the blueprint in 1997. Jonas Bjergesen published the architecture in 2025. We're 28 years into this idea, and we're just now catching up. I think we'll get there, not because utilities will have a sudden change of heart, but because the economics will make resistance pointless. When Carl was at Austin Energy, engineers from the generation side used to sneak over to his team and whisper, "Can I get assigned to your project? I think this is the future." They weren't thinking about leaving the utility. They were thinking about what being a utility worker in the future would look like. And that's the thing that most people miss about this. Internetification isn't about destroying utilities. It's about evolving them. We'll always need someone to maintain the toll road, enforce the speed limits, and collect the fares. The road itself, it can look a lot different. As Rabago wrote all the way back in 1997, the power of the technological innovation does not lie in doing business as usual in a different, even more efficient way. The heartbeat message of the future is fundamental change. But what do you think? Are you team DER or team leave things as they are? Jump in the comments and let me know. You can also check out my extended cuts of many of my videos over on Patreon. If human written and research videos matter to you, Patreon support helps a ton. And speaking of that, a big welcome and thank you to new Supporter Plus member John M. and new producer Thornell Foxvale. The link's in the description if you'd like to join, but just watching, subscribing, and turning on notifications is awesome. And check out my follow-up podcast, Still to be Determined. We'll keep this conversation going. Keep your mind open, stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.
You okay? I had to sneeze.
Yeah.
I couldn't find my remote.
Didn't you just have it?
Yes, but
Well, then it's in there, right?
yes, but I didn't see it though. I'll use this one to find my remote. Let's try Roku. Hey, watch next one.
Yeah.
Hey, next build show. You watch this one later, right?
Insulation isn't enough. What is a transfer switch and how does it work? It disconnects.
Let's see what we watched already. I'm trying to see. You ever watch any build show? Not right. This one. So this one.
Yeah.
Hey now, CJ here with the Build Show, and today I'm actually in beautiful, windy coastal community, Half Moon Bay. Got invited out here by a buddy of mine that I've known for a while, Jamie Verdura of Verdura Construction, on a new construction build of his. But today I wanted to talk about utility meter and the transfer switch location for generator backup. So check it out. All right, guys, so let's dive in. Again, I'm off-site. This is not one of our jobs. It's actually a builder that I've known for quite a while, Jamie Verdura. He's a really high-end builder and, again, aligns with the kind of projects we like to do as an electrical contractor. Custom home on a beach house community, really tight lot lines, really high-end build. I just wanted to show you what I thought was a great idea, and it was a perfect time to highlight generator transfer switch, right? So we're in a coastal community. We've talked about emergency backup power on a lot of our projects, whether it be generator or batteries, but the concept's the same. But I want to kind of briefly talk about what I thought was a good idea and the location of the place. Being on a coastal community, our utility grid is kind of iffy for a lot of reasons, weather, power grid that comes into this kind of offbeat neighborhood. The power outages are pretty frequent talking to the builders. And so almost everyone in this neighborhood likely has a generator. So of course, when he proposed building this new home, a generator was on the list of must-haves. But I especially like the setup. So I'm standing on the side of the house where our utility power comes in from the streets, right? This is our utility power. Our main source comes in from our utility company. Metered, meter main. Very traditional. We've all seen them, sometimes in different areas. They're inside, sometimes they're outside, but it's a very common setup on the West Coast. Inside this meter is a 125 amp main breaker. Again, it's not a huge house, so plenty of power, but I wanted to highlight the box next to it. The box next to it is a Generac transfer switch.
Generac?
What a transfer switch does is will automatically detect when the power from the utility company goes down. The transfer switch will actually sense it and transfer over, tell the generator that's going to be remotely mounted in the back corner to turn on. Now we have a power source that is isolated from the utility company, but now is powering or giving us a power source, right? So we got a power source, the power went out, but what do you do with it? And so why is this such a good setup is because you're able to intercept the power going into your house. So the street utility comes in. Breaker supplies sub-panel in the interior of the house. This guy is the switch in between those. So if you've ever been in a house with multiple sub-panels, one upstairs, one downstairs, or three upstairs, three downstairs, doesn't matter on the size of the building. The breaker's going to that sub-panel may be or maybe not critical loads. That being said, on a house this size, the entire house is backed up. But when you're installing a backup generator or a backup power source like a battery, you're going to get that question, hey, what do you want on? Because that's going to dictate what the size of the unit or the amount of batteries you're going to have. And of course,
The instant ones are refrigerator, lights, plugs. That being said, it's not often easy to separate those on a new or on a remodel house, right? And
You go look for, okay?
No.
Unless I can pay this remote. Turn the remote. Get here first. Turn the remote. Turn this remote. No. Settings, remotes and devices. Promo 2. That's promo 2. Nope. Preview. Get remote or find remote. Let's find this one, yeah? Or let's just leave this one. Well, this is unknown, yeah? I see it, yeah?
I heard it.
This one, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. Can't find the remote, so get remote. 7070. 7070. They're not.
unless you can set the main power. So oftentimes we'll do the transfer switch adjacent to the main panel because we have the power going outbound right here. So it's literally just a connection to the main panel. We take that feed, reroute it into the transfer switch so that when the utility goes down, the generator can send power to that load. This was thought out prior to the build, but oftentimes, if you're on a remodel, the first guy you're going to want to check out is what breakers are in your main panel and what do you want your transfer switch to communicate with or power. Really great setup. Everything's in one place. He's got his outbound conduit going to the generator location, and then he's got another conduit for the low voltage communication portion of it. So you want to check with the generator manufacturer on what they require for conduits. Oftentimes it's the circuit that goes outbound that tells the generator to turn on. It needs to be separate from the power. And again, locating that generator transfer switch or battery A gate or Tesla gateway, they all have different names, but the concept is universally is a transfer switch, right? Utility power in, emergency power in, and then the outgoing power out. So when you locate it next to a meter main panel, the odds of you being able to make those connections and not have to run extra infrastructure outbound and then figure out where to put this, I can't recommend enough that locate the generator transfer switch, especially on a new construction job, directly adjacent to the main power. I want you to dive in to more of our build show videos where we talk about this stuff in more detail.
Yeah,
I just wanted to highlight a well thought out setup on Jamie's job, but also take into consideration what you want to back up. I can't emphasize that enough. On a new home, especially when the home gets big, you're going to have to make some decisions on what circuit breakers or what loads in the house will be on that backup, right? The bigger and more stuff you want to back up, the bigger the generator. So it's oftentimes an easy decision to make when you're looking at the price points of a battery system or a generator to determine the output and then size the loads that you're going to use in the house that are absolutely critical, right? So we use the word critical loads and then we use non-backup loads because in the event that you don't want to go to that next level generator, if it's a big giant house and you don't necessarily see needing every single thing and you just want the bare minimum, you definitely can size your generator or your backup system to accommodate just what you need. Or an event like this, where the house is a lot smaller and the load is not quite as high, they were able to get away with, I think they're going to install somewhere between a 20 kW and a 26 kW Generac generator, which is around 80 to 100 amps, up to 125 amps, somewhere in that range, depending on the model and the kW output you get. But 100 amps is quite a bit of power on a house this size. And again, able to back up the whole house. So in the event of a power outage, this transfer switch will make a click because it detected the grid is down. Tell the generator to turn on. That's powered by natural gas. Now they have a new power source. And then when that power comes back on, that automatic sensor will transfer that power back to utility after it's detected it's stable, and then run the generator to automatically. So this is an automatic transfer switch. Pretty cool stuff. And again, check out more of our videos on the Build Show Network. You'll see on the next one.
What's next? This one?
Welcome back to the Build Show. I'm Travis Brungart, and it's finally happened. I ran across a framing contractor who hadn't done that much with the zip system. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to you about training a new trade on a system that you know well. Come and check it out. So let's start at the top. A lot of framers in my market have been using zip system for years. We certainly have, maybe decades, a long time. The thing about it is that you have continuity of your WRB as soon as you tape it. I mean, if you have an overdriven nail or some complex penetration that you need to liquid flash, sure. But for the most part, you nail up the panel and then you tape it. And now you're watertight as soon as you roll it. It's a pressure sensitive adhesive. This isn't complicated stuff. But if you haven't ever done it before, everything's complicated, right? I can't do brain surgery, never done it before, no training, not qualified. So with this framing contractor, they did a great job of getting walls and roof up, but they didn't tape the roof. So as we were getting rain, we were getting wet. And Zip's a premium product as compared with a commodity OSB. So if you don't bother taping it, you're not really taking advantage of the system. So with the longer open times of a complex project like this, if you saw our Site Built Trust video, this went a little slower than some frames normally would have. We wanted that water control right away, and it took a few site meetings with this new trade to get them to understand we need to tape all of these seams right away, and we want continuity from roof to wall, and we want to make sure that we have everything buttoned up tight all the way down to the foundation. And let's go there next. I actually had to call Simpson about this because every time we've used these hold downs, I've put them up directly against the studs before sheathing. That's how I've always seen it. And I kind of freaked out with my framer a little bit. I was like, what are we doing here? This has got to go on before this. What are we doing? And I actually found out I was wrong. This can go over the sheathing. However, I want it under the sheathing because it's much easier to surface out things nicely. We have a hardy shingle siding on here that's going to really telegraph angular change and make our walls not look flat. I can't route this in to the panel. This metal strap is already 3/16 thick. Then we're going to put more nails and depth into that, because when we nail through all these holes, that builds it out even probably another 3/16, maybe an eighth. We're talking about 3/8 to a half inch difference that I have to make up in an inflexible product with siding going across it. That's much easier to do in the face of the studs behind it. So if we put these straps up behind the sheeting, even if it's not perfectly flush with the frame, the zip panel allows that span to be broadcast and sort of feathered out so that you don't see it in the siding. So this is something that I didn't expect to have to train on, but new trade, I've got to let them know. I want these recessed into my framing, and then I want my shear panel over that.
What's that?
Let's go inside and I'll show you some more. So let's talk penetrations. Everybody knows that your main risk with building is water, right? And our windows and our doors are the second thing we worry about after the roof. Everything about this is great, except that I didn't get to verify the sill prep with my framer because he's about speed. This is a different framer than Wolfgang. If you listen to the Building Consensus podcast, you hear me going on and on about how important my relationship is with Clapper Creations, and we do all of our projects with the same framer, and that's great. But they're busy on another of our jobs, and the client found a framer that was going to work for this project that he was happy with, and we're working through it. But there are some things that in process I wanted to be done a little differently, and I wish that I had been here for every moment so that they didn't skip ahead on some things, because I would have said, hey, I really demand a 6 to 8 inch rise in the leg of the sill prep. I also pitch the sills. This is something that I need to work with this framing stuff to understand this is how we want it done.